Now, of course, my challenge is to speak with tears in my voice. Everything is holy now. That song is actually a song about faith development. And it begins with him talking about being a child in church and hearing the holy words from the holy person that was speaking the holy words in the church of his childhood. And then it speaks about going further into his faith and struggling with the world half there. We are all broken. It is a broken world. It is difficult. There is sadness, there are tears, there's pain. And we come through that sometimes skeptical period, maybe not so happy, maybe not so able to see that everything truly is holy now and always has been. And always has been. But if we're lucky and we've had enough food and enough medicine and enough care and enough time, we could possibly make it to one of the last stages of faith, which is the universalizing stage of faith, according to James Fowler. Now, you need to know something about James Fowler. We tend to say, oh, well, you know, stages of faith, that can't possibly have anything to do with Unitarian Universalism, because, you know, faith, really, come on, really? James Fowler actually studied Unitarians in northern New England to come up with what he came up with. So please understand that this does have everything to do with us. And we are people of faith. We are people of such deep faith. So if we are very lucky and we have had enough time, enough care, enough food, enough medicine, enough, we could possibly reach that stage, that universalizing stage of faith. Where we recognize that everything is holy now. And we see ourselves as a mighty congregation with fewer differences than we have similarities. We see ourselves as one people, as a religion. When Peter Morales talks about getting religion, what does that mean to us? What does that mean to us? What is religion? What is religion? It is a tribe of people, a collection of people who have come together with common purpose, common goals, sharing core values. What are our core values? What are the things that we hold dear? What are the things that we share? Now, each of us can come to the thing that I hold dear. I mean, I can have the Church of Connie really well, all by myself in my living room, because everything pleases me. And, you know, I've mostly got everything I want to have around me, right? There isn't music I don't like. There isn't, you know, video that's just that newfangled stuff. There isn't hymns that, oh my God, do we have to sing that one again? There are children, there aren't. But I can't make the world a better place. I can't make a difference in the world without other people. And that's what religion is for. That we gather together in the tribe. We gather together in the tribe and we try to share our values with one another and the world. Well, we have to know what they are. We really like to say that, well, you know, it's the 7 principles. Well, we ought to be able to find our values in the 7 principles, but the 7 principles are like so broad. They're so encompassing, and that's great. We could say, well, we can certainly find them in our 6 sources. Yes! There certainly should be some reality to our 6 sources in what it is we value and what it is we hold up during worship. The time that we set aside every week to hold up that which we find most worthy. That which we find most worthy. Certainly they should be there. But the struggle for us, because, you know, we are the people. We are the people of the promise and the struggle. We are not the people that think that everyone comes to a certain spot and then stops in their development. No, no. We are the people that urge everyone on and on and on, becoming and becoming and becoming yet again. Not in a dissatisfied way. Never in a dissatisfied way. Thoreau was asked what he believed, and he said, I can only tell you what I believe now, because tomorrow will probably be different. And isn't that a joyous thing? That I'm not stuck with one thing, with one belief, with one ideal, with one concept, with one picture of reality. Scott says this is the place where you will be set free. This is the place where you will be set free. How many other people need that? Is this the way of the world? Or do we have something here? If we are the people that urge and support one another on in a covenantal way, we are a covenantal, not a creedal faith. So what does that mean to us? It means we support each other. It means we admonish one another. When's the last time you went to your neighboring church and told them they weren't doing the right thing? But we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to do that. We are supposed to recognize one another. Recognize one another, and we are supposed to recognize others in the world that are trying to build a just and loving community. Not in here, but out there. Not in here. In here too, but not just in here. This should be easy, although sometimes it's not. Sometimes we get to bickering and fighting amongst ourselves to the point where we can't even figure out what to do out there. We don't even know what to tell them about ourselves. Well, we're kind of cranky. Yeah. You know, we fight over really bizarre things. I was once sitting with a group of Lutherans who were arguing about marriage laws. And they were arguing about, and so I'm sitting in this circle with these all men, and they're having this debate, and of course they're very liberal, open people, and they're having a really wonderful discussion about this. And they finally all looked at me and they said, you guys decided this a long time ago, that what do you fight about? Everything else. Everything else. So, we, being the people of the promise, which is our covenant, and a covenant is not a belief statement, it is not a creed. I believe in God the Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth and of all things visible and invisible, of his only begotten Son, begotten of his Father before all worlds, God of God, light of light, very God of very God, begotten, not made. I know this creed because I was raised Episcopalian. All right? That's not who we are. We don't say what you must believe. We support the people as they decide what they must believe. We don't tell you what to believe. We support you as you find what it is in your heart that you must believe. That's what we do. We are in the business of faith development. Actually, all congregations are in the business of faith development. It really is our job. It's what makes us different than the college or the Sierra Club or the debate group or the local library or an encounter group or any of the other things that we might be part of. Faith development is our business. It is what we do. So what makes us different from every other congregation in the world? What makes us different? It is that we teach the faith of Unitarian Universalism. So we have to know what that is. And that brings us back to the core values and how we teach the faith. How we teach the faith, so the third statement is that the congregation is the curriculum. So everything that we do, don't do, teach, don't teach, say, don't say, everything that we say we are and then we prove that we are not, teaches something. If we are the curriculum. And we are a mighty congregation. We are a mighty congregation. And sometimes I think that we are not afraid that we will fail. That the fear is that we will succeed. And then what? Then what? We are a mighty congregation. And we should be mightier. We should be mightier. So, how do we teach the faith? How do we urge the people into their own becoming, into their own transcendence? Transcendence is one of the words we struggle with. God is one of the words. Sin, holy, spiritual, faith, religion. You know, George Carlin used to do that 7 dirty words that you can't say on TV. We've got the 7 holy words that you can't use, you know. I don't want to do that anymore. I'm tired of that game. I would like for us to start using those words. I would like for us to start using those words and defining them in this faith. What does God mean to us? What does God mean to us? Have you heard Connie Barlow and Michael Dowd talk about the great story? Have you ever heard that? Okay. What does God mean to us? How many of you have read anything about process theology? Okay. I stumbled into a process theology workshop one time at GA and it was like, holy moly, this is really interesting. That we are all in this together, that we are all part of the whole, that every part is important, that each of us has something divine and holy shining out of us. Each of us has something to offer, and that we're all in this together, and everybody will be surprised at the end. Process theology. Now, if that was our definition of God, well, that would be our definition of God, right? Not some white guy in heaven with a big book and a long beard, you know. That is an immature picture of God. So what is transcendent to us? Transcendence to us. In preparation for this, I read a whole bunch of stuff from different faiths about what they thought about transcendence. And I used to think, I want to go back a bit, because I wanted to sort of welcome you into my struggle for becoming, that gleefully, happily is still going on. Maybe goes on after we die. I don't know, but it's certainly going on for me still, and it's going on for each of us. And so, in my struggle around transcendence, I used to think, I joined a Unitarian Universalist congregation when I was very young, and I became the DRE really quickly, and I think that I became the DRE because worship was, boring, okay? It was intellectual. It was well thought out. It was amazing. I mean, this person was giving a thesis every Sunday. It was just blow you away kind of thing, and yet there was no experience like what we just had here. There was no experience. I didn't feel moved. I didn't feel any moment of transcendence in that worship. No moment of it. So I blamed the worship. I thought, well, you know, it's you worship. It's just, you know, the way it is. And then later on, so I became a DRE because, you know, I could get experience that way. I could actually be in with the children, and I could be working with them, and in many ways learning my faith that way, which is quite often how we teach our children. It is not the elders of our faith that are teaching the children. It is often the parent who brings the child in and needs to learn the faith themselves. But we say, well, you know, we don't have enough teachers, and so we ask you to teach in our church school, even though you don't know a thing about Unitarian Universalism. When they asked me to be a DRE, I was very young, and the president of the congregation came out and said to me, so, why don't you be the DRE? And I said, me? He said, yes. Don't they need some training? Oh, no, anybody can do that. So I was smart enough, at least, to say I don't think I can do this alone, and so it was another woman and I took on this job, and we did it for 3 years together, and then I felt the call. She did not. I needed more. I wanted more. I wanted more. But I didn't want to be a minister. I didn't want to be a minister. Because we are the people who practice true shared ministry. There are 2 kinds of leaders that bubble up out of our elders in our congregations. And they are the preaching, the ordained, and the teaching, the non-ordained. That's shared ministry. That marriage of knowledgeable lay people along with fabulous women. That's what we do. That's what we do. So in my own development, I found myself in religious education because I could grow there. I could grow there. But I blamed worship for not being transcendent. And I've come to decide that actually it wasn't worship's fault. I think now, at this moment, probably will change tomorrow, but I think now, at this moment, that in all honesty, transcendence has to come in the mundane also. So another time when I was with the Lutherans, I have spent a lot of time with the Lutherans because I studied with Peter Steinke, who's a Lutheran minister, and he wrote Healthy Congregations. And so I spent about 15 years with them. And we were in Paradise Valley at a Catholic retreat center. And at this Catholic retreat center, they had a Zen walk where they had these little gazebos built all over the desert. It was in the desert. And you could go and do yoga and you know, look at the desert and stuff. The desert is not exactly my favorite place. It's not green enough. You know, I really like the green. Upstate New York is really lovely. Stay. And so I got up every morning and I went out onto this little walk, and I would do some yoga, and I would sit and watch the sunrise in Paradise Valley. Holy moly, talk about everything being holy now. Well, as the sun rose, it would turn the gray brown of the desert into a rainbow. There would be a splash of red here, a little bit of green there, a little bit of blue there. And I would sit there with tears in my eyes and think, this miracle happens every day and nobody pays any attention to it. How lucky am I to be sitting here doing this at this moment? And that's transcendence. For me, that was transcendence. It actually, in many ways, changed my life. Each transcendent moment that we have changes our lives. Buddhism believes that transcendence is not sustainable. So maybe it's not. So maybe part of what we're looking for is actually transformation. It's not just transcendence. So we have these moments of amazing insight. We have these moments of experience that's not just mental, emotional, physical. There is a physical state. There is a wonderful young minister in Texas. His name is Aaron White. And he talks about when he left Christianity, he also was a preacher's kid, and he talked about when he left Christianity, that the one thing he missed was baptism. Because there's this thing that happens in baptism where you go on and we're talking full body baptism, okay? We're not talking about sprinkling some water like in the church I grew up in. This is full body baptism. So there's this moment where you're immersed in the water, and when you come back up, you're alive. You take that deep breath of being alive, awake, aware, in a whole new way. And he said that was the one thing in Unitarian Universalism that he missed. After he gave that sermon, 5 Unitarians went to their ministers, different ministers, and begged to be baptized in the lake, in the love of Unitarian Universalism. Now, why can't we do stuff like that? Why is this such a struggle for us? The love of Unitarian Universalism. We shall be set free. We are a mighty congregation. We should be mightier. We should be bigger. There are so many people that need this. Phil and I have been talking. Phil's been a Unitarian Universalist for all of 12 weeks. And one of the things that he said to me is, man, this is the best kept secret in the world, isn't it? Yes, it is. And so what are we afraid of? What are we afraid of? I too want to be emboldened. I want to evangelize. I want to go out into the world and tell people the good news that I see happening right here, right now. We are a mighty congregation. We have something at the center of us that is amazing. What is it? If it is not God, and I'm okay, that's okay. Although I could argue with you that it is. If it's not God, what is it? Several congregations in St. Lawrence District have done an exercise called the Experience of the Holy. It's a Rob L. Isaacs exercise, where what you do is you meet and talk about transcendent moments that you have personally had. I just told you one. I just told you my experience in Paradise Valley. I've had several. I had one where I was sitting on the Continental Divide, and a storm was rolling up the Continental Divide, and 3 rainbows in a row touched both sides of the divide. When I came to and I recognized I was about to be killed, I was really moved. And I got moving. But we can all name those things. When my mother died. And interesting enough, not when my child was born, but when my niece was born. Because, you know, when my child was born, I was in a great deal of pain and I was kind of angry. But when my niece was born, they handed her to me as a newborn. I was there. And they handed her to me, and she opened her eyes. And she looked at me, and there was a soul inside there. There was this little being with all of her fingers and all of her toes, and just sparkling little eyes that were looking right at me as a newborn. I mean, I was blown away. I was blown away. And the sight of her and holding my mother while she died, those two things. How often do we get to do that? And transcendent piece of life. But I think, in all honesty, when we talk about the faith, I think we're talking more about transformation. What is it we're going to become? What does the world need from us? What are we called to be? We are the faith that will set you free. That's a great piece. Freedom. But with great freedom comes great responsibility. Great responsibility. Yeah, dang, she says. Yes. Great responsibility. I like the Native American idea of making decisions, thinking about the 7th generation. So do we do that enough? Do we take counsel with one another? Sit with one another? I think one of the things that we do far too often is that we don't even figure out what the problem is before we come up with a solution. Can we just sit in the pain long enough to figure out what it is we're doing? What the problem is? Before we rush to fix it? Can we possibly do that with one another? Very seldom. Pain is so intense that we decide it needs to be fixed right away. And quite frankly, a quick fix, as Ed Friedman would say, another one of my mentors, is neither. It's neither. Because all you're doing is prolonging the inevitable. It's just going to keep cropping up over and over and over again. What are we afraid of as Unitarian Universalists? Why aren't we bold? Is it because we haven't spent enough time asking deep questions of one another and waiting for the answer? Have we been just practicing sort of this shallow faith? This shallow faith that keeps us, a lot of times in high drama, but not much depth? Because drama will keep us from going deep. If we are constantly bickering and fighting over little things, whether the first hymn comes before or after the chalice lighting, whether or not we've got a screen in the congregation, whether or not we're getting enough from the UUA. whether or not we're getting enough from the UUA. What is the UUA? What do we get from it? What is the UUA? The UUA is us at our largest presence in the world. So when I, and I can go to that spot where I think, wow, 4% of our budget, that's a lot of money. 4% of our budget, that's a lot of money. I had a minister one time who said, wow, that's the biggest bang for your buck you're ever going to get. Biggest bang for your buck. But times are hard. Times are hard. And so we struggle with making ends meet. And we don't actually go back to the congregation and tell them the consequences of not giving enough money to the ministers that are serving them. Because we think, I don't exactly understand what the fear is there either, but I honestly believe that we have a huge issue with money. We'll talk about sex for a year, but we will not talk about money. We will not talk about money. So how do we become the generous people we need to be? How do we do that? I was part of a congregation that was an emerging congregation. And they started off in a very covenantal way and wanted to expect very high giving. And so they started out with tithing. Tithing, 10%. 10% of your income went to the congregation. And a woman joined who had won the lottery in the And she came into my office and she said, I've got a stingy little black heart. And I just don't think that I'm ever going to be able to be as generous as the people in this congregation. And I said, generosity is every bit as catching as stinginess. And she caught it. It's great. It's great. In that same congregation, the children stayed through the whole worship service and put money in the plate every week. And through much anxiety, twisting arms, and coercing, although there is no coercion in Unitarian Universalism, I talked the treasurer into taking on an 8-year-old boy who would count the children's money. We had those little envelopes from Cokesbury, and the children's names were on it. They would put their quarters in and they would drop it in the plate. And so this little 8-year-old who wanted to be the treasurer, he was this great kid, would count the money for the treasurer and kept an accounting of the children's money. And in the next canvas period, when the children stood up and said, I gave $24.25 to my congregation, people couldn't give money fast enough. It was amazing. It was amazing. So how do we teach generosity? If faith development is all we do, and this is the faith we're teaching, and this congregation is the curriculum, what are we teaching? What are we teaching? Are we teaching our children to be generous? Are we giving them the opportunity to be generous? Do we give the rest of the congregation an opportunity to be generous? Which would mean that we go back. That same little boy was also an usher. And when it was his turn to pass the plate down the row, first of all, he'd wear his suit and tie to be an usher, and he'd come and he'd pass the plate down the aisle, and if it came back with not enough money in it, he would give everybody a dirty look and pass it again. Very Baptist of him. And they put more money in. The treasurer loved it when he was the usher. Oh my God, let's make Alex the usher every week. It's great. So how do we teach this stuff? Far too often we depend on people who don't know what this all means. And we go to people who we would consider elders. Now, I got to explain that word to you. I do not mean old when I say elder. I don't mean elderly. I mean elder. An elder is an individual who understands very deeply the meaning of the faith. The meaning of the faith. And if we have done our jobs right, you can be 14 years old and be an elder in this faith. Now, the important piece is that we often don't do our job right. And so, because we don't have elders teaching. So we often come to people that we consider elders in our congregations and we ask them to teach. And they say, no, been there, done that, my kids are raised and gone and I don't want to do that anymore. And that brings me back to the last stage of faith. How many boomers do we have in this room? Y'all. Y'all. So do you remember when you were a hippie? And you believed that love was better than hate? And that peace was better than war? Remember that? I remember that. We were right. That was the good part. The rest of it was, I don't know. But, you know, the music was good. But we got sidetracked by a bunch of stuff. But now we find ourselves in this remarkable place, in this remarkable faith. As Unitarian Universalists, old hippies, find ourselves here. We are the love people. I mean, we get called that all the time. Peter Morales was in Phoenix and they kept trying to get an interview, and finally somebody said, would you like to talk to the president of the people with the yellow shirts? And that's how he got his interview. They interviewed another minister who was a Methodist minister, was wearing our love, standing on the side of love shirt. This is fabulous. Have you ever been prouder? This is what we get from Unitarian Universalist Association. This is the footprint that we leave. That we are the people who are standing, fighting, sitting, rolling on the side of love. Have you ever been prouder? Have you ever been prouder? I haven't. I have never been prouder, and there's nothing that fits us better than that. To be called the love people. The universalist side of us is that God is love. God is love. God is love. It will save our souls. It will save our souls. So, find ourselves grandparents. I understand exactly what it means to be the grandmother to my granddaughters. It's way fun, and way more fun than being the mom. And I take it very seriously, so I'm not one of those, you know, anything goes grandmothers. We make them toe the line, get in there and practice the piano, you know, that kind of thing. And they're with us all the time. Both of our granddaughters are with us all the time. Parents are off working, and that's as it should be. We're one of 3 primates on the face of this planet that keep grandparents alive. What is that for? It's not to play golf. It's really not. We've got this weird idea about retirement. Weird idea about retirement. I knew my father has been retired since he was 52. He's 89. He has been living on the dole that long. Okay? I love my dad. I don't want anything to happen to him. I love him. But good God, man, what are you doing? What are you doing? I don't want to be that. I don't want to be that way. I want to be able to step into this last stage of my life and recognize myself as one of the grandmothers, not of my grandchildren, but of the tribe. Holy moly, talk about everything being holy now. This is great. I'm lost, but it's great. I've never been here before. This is a scary place to be. This is important. This is really, really, really important. I have to be careful what I say, maybe. I have to say what I mean. I have to reach down deep inside of myself and give myself away. I haven't been able to do that. I'm a pretty closed-off person, real stoic, hate check-in. Okay? And so how do I do that? How do you open up your heart and your soul and pour it out into the world? Because why would I take that with me? Why would I take that with me? That's the energy I have to give. This is the last hurrah. What kind of a difference am I going to make here with my tribe? Y'all. You are a mighty congregation. You are a mighty congregation. I have to see what time it is. Because, you know, I can, like, do this for 70 hours. What are we to become? Where are we going? We have to know who we are. We have to be able to articulate the faith. We have to make room as grandparents for the next generation and the generation after that. Not in the get out of the way kind of thing that quite often gets said to older people. If you would only let go. And we have to let go. We have to let go. But in relationship with everybody else. Not in the, okay, whatever, it's all yours, it's broken, see if you can fix it. It's broken. I helped break it. I'll try to help. I'll try. And it'll be hard. And here's the other reality is we're going to fail. But we have to enter into this, but we will also succeed. So what we have to enter into is this fabulous adventure of doing this work. This amazing adventure that is permission-giving enough to allow for failure. We have to build a foundation of trust, which I actually think is the biggest problem that we have. When we decided to become Unitarian Universalists and the consolidation happened in 1961, at that moment in time, it was said that we would be the greatest theological discussion of all time. The greatest theological discussion of all time. What happened? We didn't talk about it anymore. Now we find ourselves as 51-year-olds this year. 51-year-olds. And gee, look, it's time to talk about this now. What does transcendent mean to us? What does God mean to us? And it doesn't have to mean exactly the same thing to each of us. Some of us can say there is no God. The word has no meaning. Others can say other things. That's okay. We are the people that support the individual as they struggle to their own reality, their own what they must believe. That's okay. But the discussion is what we have to have. We have to not be afraid of the words. We have to not be afraid to evangelize. We have to not be afraid to talk about what is important to us out there in the real world. So how do we do that? Because we're afraid of it. Because somebody's going to ask us a question or come down really hard on one side of faith or another, and it's going to flip us out. It's going to just freak us out, okay? So that we don't have to talk at all. I travel a lot. Newsflash, right? I travel a lot, and so I tried practicing this on airplanes, okay? So one time on an airplane, I sat next to a young woman who was reading her Bible, and she says to me, where are you going? And I was going someplace, I think I was headed to Memphis. So I told her where I was going, and I said, where are you going? I'm going to college, Bible college. So she started talking about her college. And she said, what do you do? Well, if we had bishops, I'd be a bishop. And if you knew me, you know how funny that actually is. But we don't have bishops. We're born out of the Congregationalist movement, and so we don't have bishops. And so I'm middle judicatory, a big word, middle judicatory for the Unitarian Universalist Association. Unitarian Universalism? I've never heard of it. What is that? And then, of course, it comes around to, well, it is a Bible-based faith, right? Yes, the Bible is one of our sources of wisdom. And I can tell where the conversation is going. And my job is not to convert her. She has a path. That is not my job. My job is to be genuine with her. And so what I said to her, and I screwed this up other times, but in this particular instance I got it right. I said, your faith means a lot to you, doesn't it? And she said yes. And I said, how does it help you change the world? Because that's what my faith does for me. And now we're talking about the same stuff. Because she too wants to change the world. And she wants to make it a better world. She wants to make it a better world. So how do we practice? I listened to a sermon by Scott Taylor online about loving the Tea Party. It was brilliant. It was brilliant and thoughtful, provocative. And I thought to myself, this is exactly it. So if it's hard for us to love each other, how can we love the Tea Party? Because that's our job. We live in unkind times where people are allowed to say horrible things about one another that are not true. And yet it gets broadcast all over the world. Rush Limbaugh comes to mind. If we are going to be countercultural, which we always have been, what does that say that we need to do? And if we are the love people, what do we need to do? We need to love them. We need to love them. Now that doesn't mean, tough love is still love. And I don't think that we need to be mushy, icky, doormat kind of people. I mean that we insist on being taken seriously. Not as individuals, but as this faith. This is something real. This is not a holding pattern for the children till they find something real out there. This is real. This is real. We have something amazing here. We have such a wonderful answer. And we have been hoarding it. We have not been generous. We have not even been grateful for what we have. What did we get from the UUA? What do we get from the district? What do we get from our minister? Why do we pay that DRE all that money? What do we get from them anyway? The president should have a target on their back, and we just get to complain to them because it's their turn. We're not grateful for what we have. I think there are two secrets to life, and it's very similar to what Scott said. One is to love what you have, and that means you are grateful for it. Love what you have. Our association makes us stronger because we are not alone. Do you really want to be a 100-member congregation in upstate New York all by yourself? All by yourself. Our association is what keeps us centered to the rest of the world and the rest of the other congregations that think the way we do and are working the way we want to work. That's what the association is. The other is that you must serve something larger than yourself. You must serve something larger than yourself. It can't just be am I happy. There's a new Alban book called The Illusion of the Happy Church. The job of the congregation is not to make you happy. It is to challenge you to be the very best Unitarian Universalist that you can be, building the just and loving world out there. That's our job. It is also to comfort you in times of need. And that's the art of balancing the comfort and the challenge that we need to do for the people so that they can be set free. Lay their burden down. Lay their burden down in a safe and trusted place so that they can pick that burden back up and go out into the world and change the world. Change the world. I also think that we struggle, and this one is a leap, so hang in there with me for a second. I think we struggle with the parable of the Good Shepherd. And this came home to me again yesterday in the church that we were in, because the stained glass, the incredible stained glass in that church, one of them is of the Good Shepherd. So it's Jesus holding the lamb and the other lambs around them. Yeah. Whenever I hear that parable, I think to myself, how many times has that lamb been lost? Is this like a habitual thing? And how many times as the Good Shepherd am I going to leave the 99 that aren't lost going out to look for this? Am I actually leaving them all by themselves, or is there another minister back there taking care of them? How many wolves are there around here? Is there a dog? Do I have a dog with me? That would be helpful. So I think that one of the things that we've suffered far too long, and I think that it's, I understand the meaning of that parable, that all are welcome, that we open our arms to everybody, and that's true. And there certainly are people who are not here that we should be struggling to bring into the fold. But they would probably not describe themselves as lost lambs. All right? And so for far too long, what we've done is make everything comfortable for the person who is the least comfortable. Who's the least comfortable. And we should go out of our way to be kind. And absolutely, we should have love in our hearts for everyone. And we should honor people, honor human beings. And we should demand to be honored back. And the mighty congregation has rights too. The 99 have rights too. And so we have to serve them too. And in all honesty, if we were doing that really well, we would be much larger than we are. Much larger than we are. I am going to miss St. Lawrence District. By the way, I'm Connie Goodbread. And I have been your interim district executive, a job that suits me really well, quite frankly. Because it's a job where you come into a system. I'm a systems student, and so you come into a system and you get to know it really quickly. And then you identify both what that system does incredibly well, and you do so many things incredibly well. And then you identify the challenges, and you help the people that are there to find a path towards dealing with the challenges. It's been a wonderful, wonderful, rich experience for me. And I am grateful, eternally grateful to you for allowing me to serve this faith in St. Lawrence District and in Serve. Your regional group is so much more well-formed with infrastructure and realities than any of the others. And I worked in several. So please, be thankful for what you have. Be grateful. Be grateful for what you have. And be generous with one another. And be generous with Unitarian Universalism. Be good, kind people. Be the people that you are inside. Open your heart. Lay your souls bare to each other. Talk deeply. Talk deeply about what matters most to you. If we do that with one another, how mighty of a congregation, how emboldened we will be. Thank you.